Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Nomad Experts podcast by Beach Commute. Today, we've got Jeff and Marissa, and we're going to talk about something that we've maybe neglected a little bit over our time on this podcast. And that's 11. We found 11 ways to find cheap flights as a digital nomad. Racked our brains. We've been doing this for a long time, and we've got some tips that I think we can probably help you with. And this came about, actually, I don't think Marissa, it wasn't really our idea, was it? Did we get a suggestion from the audience or something?
Yeah, someone wrote us in, which we love so much because Jeff and I talk all the time about don't book your flights way in advance, get somewhere first. And then we're always talking about, oh yeah, I met someone and then we wanted to go there. So, a week or two in advance, we just booked our flight there. And someone wrote in with such a great question. It's like, that sounds nice, but how are you finding affordable flights? How are you logistically getting to these places with such short notice? So that inspired us to say, oh yeah, that's a good point. People probably don't understand that you actually can find really affordable flights within, again, we try, it's best, I would say, if you can do it 2 weeks before you're going to somewhere else. Sometimes I do it the day before, 2 days before. It's not the most ideal. But you don't have, I think there's, people believe that you have to book a flight 2 to 3 months in advance, especially if it's international. And it's sometimes ideal, if you really know you're going somewhere, on that one vacation a year. But living as a digital nomad, you're much more on the go. It's very different. So we wanted to share the 11 ways that we do this. So kind of with anything, Jeff and I are doing this subconsciously, but we love when someone asks us these questions because we're like, okay, what is the system? What are the ways that we actually do this ourselves? And it forces us to sort of think through what are the ways that we have creatively done this.
Yeah, kind of got this subconscious checklist that I didn't even realize was a thing. So I could do all of these tiny little things. And we were talking, Marissa and I were talking before we started this podcast.
Yes.
Are we experts in this area? And no, we're not experts in this area. There are flights, there are points people out there that live in. They've gamified it. They really turn it into a passion, and they know how to do this stuff. Transferring points, buying points, and transferring. It's yes, there are people out there who are quote unquote experts in this. But having done this so long and looking at the list that we built out as we were just kind of brainstorming, realized that we actually are pretty decent at this. Yeah. And there are a lot of different techniques you can use to get good deals.
What I like about this specifically, as Jeff just said, I was like, are we the ones qualified? We are not the points experts. We are not this. But I think it actually makes us more qualified because I would say most people aren't going to take the time learning how to book with points and all of the miles and things. I mean, there's ways you can literally just kind of book a flight with your miles, but if you're really gamifying the system, it feels like a full-time job to me. So that's not what this episode is about. We will bring on an expert at some point to talk about that for those of you who are interested. But this is actually for the average Joe, the average Jane, or whatever you want to call it. If you were like me and Jeff, where you don't want to take the time to learn about all the points or things, and not every country has the same, credit card points and all of that. So these are just real ways that anyone can book. And I actually, Jeff, just thought of a number 12 bonus that's one of my weirdest favorites that I sometimes forget to do that I'm going to add at the end.
Let's
so
keep it.
I wrote it down. So we'll do a bonus number 12. Wait till the end, guys, if you want to hear it, because it's actually one of the weirdest ways to save money and works. And I forget to do it sometimes. So I'm going to use my own checklist for this next time. But you want to kick it off with number one, Jeff?
Probably the most obvious, and it's the place that I always start, is Google Flights. So Google Flights is helpful because if you haven't used it before, it aggregates all of the different airlines, whatever time frame you're looking at, to where you're going, round trip or one way, and it'll tell you what all of the up-to-date flight price information is. It gives you all the information you need to know, where are the connections, how long are your layovers, what is the total flight time, what is the cost, and it's pretty good. I'd say 99% of the time the price that they give you is the price that you'll actually find on the website. Occasionally you'll see a little bit of a mismatch if there's a bit of a timing disconnect there, but it does a really good job with that. So you get up-to-date price information. It will also give you a spectrum of how expensive that flight is relative to other times of the year. So it'll tell you, hey, you're paying a really expensive price right now, or you're paying a normal price, or you're paying a really cheap price. And then the last thing I want to say on that is you can set up alerts. And you can set up alerts for specific days or time frames, which I think Marissa should talk about a little bit in a point coming up here. So you can set like from date X to date Y, I'm thinking about going to a specific place. And it'll send you an alert, be like, hey, prices dipped or prices went up kind of thing. So it's kind of like just a really good first stop if I want to book. Just get it low. Just kind of get a lay of the land. Like, okay, here's kind of roughly what I'm looking at for any range. Is that usually where you start, Google Flights, or do you start somewhere else?
100%. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And it's great that we did that as number one. I always start with Google Flights as well, just to see like, what am I looking at? If somewhere I want to go, is it like $1,300-ish or is it like $100? Dude, like sometimes I just literally have no idea. So I always start with Google Flights because like you said, you can kind of see all the different the different airlines and things that are happening. I also set alerts. I love, you had it in the most digital nomad phrase, which is like, I'm thinking about maybe going to this place. And then you can start to get alerts, right? So it's like the non-committal way where like, you just toggle a little button for your search, the days, the times, the flights, whatever it is. And then like you said, it's nice because you get alerts where, maybe I've forgotten I even wanted to go and 2 weeks later it's like, oh, the flight dropped. Like maybe I should book this flight. Cool. Or like it's gone up and I'm like, all right, maybe we're not going there anymore,
Sometimes it'll shape my trips too. I was looking from Romania to, I got a 3-week gap. It's like, okay, it was going to be, I can't remember where it was, but the flight sucked. I'm like, okay, I'm just not going to go there because the flights were so bad, So just using Google Flights will actually maybe shape your trip. It's like if you're trying to go somewhere that's should be a 2-hour flight, but you've got an 8-hour layover is the best thing you can do. Like, okay, maybe not. Maybe I spend 3 weeks somewhere else. But it's really good starting point.
Yeah. So with number 2, this is one some people might be familiar with, some people might not. But one of our favorite ways to kind of look at flights is a company called Going. They used to be called Scotch Cheap Flights. There's a couple of other different companies like this, but basically you put in your destination and it will tell you like if there's crazy flight prices that drop for something. So let's say you had no plans to go to Hawaii and suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, there was some mistake there. It's like $200 from your airport and you can fly. Like, you're like, great. All right, that sounds good. I always wanted to go, but I hadn't thought about it. So it's just a cool way to get deals that like they're full-time jobs. That I always say like the way that we scan all of the internet land to find remote jobs, they're doing the same thing for cheap flights. So they're like our equivalent, I like to think. Instead of remote jobs, they're looking for flights and send out those cheap flight deals. So it's just a cool way to get ideas to your inbox. And we'll include a link to that in our show notes as well.
That's pretty good. I like that one because it feels like you're getting a steal sometimes. Like, here's an accident, or oh my God, this flight dropped to like insanely low levels. And you get in there and it's like, I don't know, it feels good sometimes getting that really good deal. It feels like a lot of times you're getting screwed by the airlines sometimes. Like, oh, you got to check your bags. It's an extra $120. And when you can get that back on them, you're like, all right, there's a little bit, get a little bit of flight justice.
I feel like you love to like stick it to the man. You're like, all of those corporations, you're like, no, take that. So yeah, that's a cool number 2.
Now that you got me fired up.
I want to do a whole episode of you just going off for an hour. I'm just going to like poke the bear and ask you questions.
Let's do it.
I'm excited. All right. So with that one, Jeff, what's number 3 on the list?
We talk about this all the time. Not officially as a podcast topic yet, but it's buying one-way tickets and actually just kind of toggling back and forth and checking what the price difference is between a one-way ticket to your destination and a round-trip ticket to your destination without an intention of returning. Let me unpack that a little bit here. We recommend one-way tickets a lot because your plans change, people go onward to new places that sound interesting, and if you got a return ticket, like, okay, it limits your potential. It limits your opportunities to go to new cool places, and it is a little bit more confining. So usually we recommend it for that purpose. We also sometimes recommend it because it can be cheaper than getting a round-trip ticket. Sometimes if you, like, even if I have an intention of returning, if I buy a one-way ticket there and a one-way ticket back, it can actually be cheaper. I have in the past bought a round-trip ticket without returning, to a place because it was actually cheaper than a one-way ticket. So just, I guess the tip on this one isn't necessarily one-way tickets, but just toggle between one-way tickets and round-trip tickets with the intention of staying, because there can be pretty drastic price changes. I remember that one, I was flying back from Dublin to the States, and I think the one way was around $800, but if I bought a round trip ticket, I was around $550 or $600. I didn't try to put any thought into it. I'm just like, okay, whatever, just buy the round trip ticket and ghost fly it back. Just send it.
Yeah, I did the same flying back from Nepal to the States. It was like my grandmother had died. It was like it was a very last minute ticket, and it was a lot cheaper for whatever reason to book that round trip ticket. And I also didn't know, I was like, maybe I might go back to Japan afterwards. I didn't know what I was going to want to do, and it flew through Japan. And I had completely forgot that I had even booked that. And someone called, like the flight check-in or something called. They're like, ma'am, like your flight is approaching for this. I was like, my what? Like I didn't even remember I had booked it. I was like, oh, but I didn't take it. But yeah, I love the overall advice. It's like, yes, we always say book one-way tickets with the intention of like you probably won't get on a return flight. But I love this advice, which is sometimes it just happens to be cheaper to buy that return, like the round trip, even if you don't get on it. So check which one. And also, we've talked about this, if there's a chance that you might return or you might want to get on that flight, let's say, or like even if it's a multi-city, you're like, I might go to this country afterwards and it's $75 or $100 more if I book it all in this one ticket, and then, or it would be like $500 if I just booked it separately. Sometimes I just kind of gamble and I'll book something and then it's like, all right, well, I only lost $75 and I didn't get on it, but had I wanted to, it would have saved, $425. So it's helpful just to kind of like play around with that and assume you won't get on it, but check out the different options of like what's cheapest to do. Okay, number 4, this is actually one of my favorites, and I feel like it's actually the biggest money saving thing because you're a digital nomad. So with this, or if you're planning to become one, right? So number 4 is be flexible with your destination. And this is what Jeff was just talking about, where he was like, gonna go to a country and was like, well, maybe not. So the way that people are used to booking flights, like if you're living the typical corporate life or you're a couple of weeks of vacation a year, you've got that destination in mind and you're like, all right, like I'm going there, ride or die, like this is where I want to go, and that's it. No matter, like you'll try to find the best price for what you can. But as a nomad, because you have years and every month and every week to travel the world, you don't have to go to that place tomorrow, because you could go the next month, 3 months from there. You could go next year when a flight price does make sense. So I would say actually like the biggest flight saving of all is just like if you can be flexible with which destination, and by that like which country you want to go to, which city you want to go to, you actually can save a ton of money. So with that as an example, I was in Mauritius last year. It feels like it was like 5 years ago. I was in Mauritius last year. I was with a friend of ours, and we really wanted to go to Mozambique afterwards. I really wanted to go to Madagascar, but it was closed for COVID. That was another story. So we had our hearts set on going to Mozambique. And as we looked at it, the flights were like $1,200-$1,300, like no matter how we swung it. And we were booking pretty last minute too. So as we were looking at different options, and we'll talk about how we found this, we ended up going to Namibia because it was, I think maybe South Africa was like the only thing cheaper, but my friend had already been and I was going afterwards. So we ended up in Namibia, had no plans to go there right then, but the flight, I think the price was like $400 3 days from when we wanted to leave instead of $1,200. So we were like, all right, Namibia it is. And it was one of my favorite adventures. It was epic. It was a cool country. So if you can leave yourself open to like flying somewhere you weren't expecting or going somewhere different in the meantime and going to that other place later, you can save, hundreds, thousands of dollars in your year.
Yeah, no, I've done exactly the same thing. I was looking to come back from Cape Town, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, where's the direct flights? What's the cheapest ones? And I could have been anywhere. I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I ended up choosing where I ended up, but it was the flexible me was like, okay, I could go to Belgium, and that's going to be the cheapest thing. And I could have a good time in Belgium for a week. So I ended up in Belgium for a week. And not just, like, I did want to see Belgium, but it was mostly just like, oh, that made the most sense. Okay.
Right.
New adventure. Here we go. Onward to Belgium.
New adventure. I love that. Yeah, so it's kind of like the new adventures. And I still haven't been to Mozambique yet, and I will get there at some point, So it's just a kind of part of the fun of digital nomad life, which is very different. It's just a different mindset and way of looking at things than you might be used to. And that's, again, back to that person's original question, which is like, how are you booking these like last minute things? It's like, well, sometimes you go somewhere different than you intended or wanted to go. And it turns out better than you expected.
Number 5 is playing around with the different airports that are next to each other. So a lot of times, I'd say majority of the time, if you find a main hub, so like Frankfurt in Germany, like Charles de Gaulle in Paris, like the main hubs, the ones with the most flights coming in and out, tend to be pretty cheap. But you can find some smaller, obscure airports nearby these main hubs a lot of times. And you might not notice them unless you're looking for them, and they can be significantly cheaper. So an example is I was flying from the UK to Cluj in Romania, and flying out of London Heathrow, it was really, really expensive. It wasn't a big deal flight. It was like a 3-hour flight, something like that. And it turns out that there was a nearby airport. It was like a couple modular units, like you were your own security guard, like you checked yourself in, flew the plane, take care of your own bags and everything. And I think it was a couple $100 cheaper. And I just had to explore around. I was looking on a few maps to see what other airports were nearby. And it turns out that this smaller airport, which is kind of a benefit too, going to a small airport, because you don't have to deal with just insanity. You just walk in, check yourself in, and you're good to go. But oftentimes it can be cheaper. So I guess the tip on this one is take a look at the main hubs for sure, because a lot of times they'll be cheaper, but also you can see it in Google Maps, the nearby airports. So take a look at the nearby airports and see if there's any cheaper deals, because sometimes there will be. And if it's a smaller airport, it may end up being significantly less of a hassle because there's just fewer people in and out.
And to add, I want to like extend on that, Jeff, because something I didn't realize until probably too many years into my nomad life is that not all regional airports and airlines are listed on Google Flights. And I would say actually this probably is more about airlines than airports necessarily. But for example, if you're trying to get somewhere small, today I'm flying from Europe to Asia and I want to get to some obscure place, there's actually a lot of like small regional, both like in Africa, more so Africa, Asia, maybe some Europe as well, but these like small airlines that Google Flights doesn't always pull in. So as Jeff said, you kind of have to find that main hub and then maybe just literally on Google Maps, look and see like what other airports are around here, and then literally Google like what like airlines fly to this airport, because what you might find is sometimes it'll look really expensive to have these main airlines or main carriers fly to where you think you need to go. But if you actually fly to Dubai nearby, let's say, and then find an obscure, like smaller Asia airline, you can get like a really cheap $45 ticket from, Singapore, Dubai to somewhere else, or from Malaysia, it's from Kuala Lumpur to Bali or something that won't be listed on Google Flights. So kind of find those hubs and then do your research of the other airports and airlines that are nearby to where you want to go to, because it's not, like we say, start with Google Flights for sure, but then you sometimes got to do a little digging.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good point. We're looking from Buenos Aires to Mexico City, and I think it's an insane flight. Like it's apparently not... It's not a common flight, I guess, for whatever reason. You think two main hubs.
It would seem common,
pretty regular, right? Maybe I would think in my head $300, $400, $500 one way, something like that would probably make sense. No, it's like $800 or $900. So some people did some research and found something off Google Flights that was like $300 or something like that. So there's deals out there. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a main resource center to figure out which these little airports are really, really good deals. It's kind of a trial as you go. So this tip is just do a little extra research into other airports around there, because you might find something good. And just like if you're starting at Google Flights, just refine. I think is kind of a theme as we go through this. Who's next? Me or you've got yours. Number 6 is one I've never heard of. I'm excited to hear about this one.
I love it. It's one of my favorites. So quickly before I get to number 6, if you could take a second, if you haven't already done so, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you are, take your phone, open it up, and just click on the little 5-star thumbs up, I don't know, subscribe, follow, comment, whatever you do. But it takes literally 5 seconds. We've had some really great people adding to our stars and subscribes and all of that. And it really helps the podcast grow, helps us keep giving you all of this great information. So thank you so much for taking a second to do that. And with that, okay, so number 6, I don't know why so many people still don't know of this. I kind of forgot about it for years, and I do sometimes forget about it when even I'm booking, so I'm like going to burn this in my brain to always remember, because it has some of the best flight savings, and it's a website called Skiplagged. So that's Skiplagged. I think it's like, I want to say it's, see if that comes up for you, Jeff. Let me know if I spelled that right.
I'm going to do it on the fly, because I do want to know.
Oh, I love it. Okay. Yeah, check it out while I'm explaining it. Tell us what you find. So what this does is sometimes it's cheaper to basically if you take airlines that are competing, right? So I have an example where I was flying from Atlanta to Costa Rica once, and the flight was something like $600 or $800. But I had friends who were flying from Michigan through Atlanta to Costa Rica, and because there was more competition, just different airlines that flew different routes from Michigan, they were able to find different flights. So what Skiplagged does is basically, if you are saying like Atlanta is my end destination, there might be a cheaper way where Atlanta is the layover, but you just don't get on that last leg of the flight. So to break this down, this was probably 2 years ago. I was flying from Spain, and I was trying to get back to Atlanta for a friend's wedding. And the price was like, I want to say it was like $800 for this flight. And then I went into Skiplagged, and it found a flight from, I think I was in Madrid, through Atlanta. It was just like a layover through Atlanta and ended in New York. And it was something like $150 for that flight. And so I just didn't get on the leg, that last part, from Atlanta to New York. If you are a rule follower, this might freak you out, because you will get all sorts of alerts like, you are not allowed to not get on your last leg of the flight. Like, it is illegal to do this or something. I don't know if they say the words illegal, but it's like against the quote rules. But you're not really going to get penalized. I think maybe if you flew every single flight with the same airline and did this over and over, maybe. I'm like, who are they really watching to do this? I don't think so. I've never had any problems. But the last caveat with this, if you are doing this, and this goes back to one of my reasons, not the only reason, but why I love to travel with only a carry-on and a backpack, is because you can't check a bag if you are doing this, because your bag will end up at the last destination. So please be mindful. Don't forget this part. If you are traveling with big luggage, you cannot use this. And also you're saving money by not having to probably pay for luggage anyway. But also make sure, so when I travel with the carry-on, it's a pretty full carry-on. Some of those super small regional airlines will make me check my bag because the overhead is really small or something. So you kind of have to go a step above and beyond with this one, where I remember when I flew that flight from Spain to Atlanta, I actually checked and made sure, you can look at the actual plane. This is like so many layers deep, but I had to actually Google what plane is flying. What is that plane, what are their their baggage rules? Is there room overhead? And I like to board the plane last and get there really late. But for this one, when I use this, I make sure I'm on that plane.
Why?
First in line.
We need to talk about that.
Why I like to be the last to board?
Super late and the last. My anxiety just went up in that one sentence. Why would you want to be late and last?
Well, I don't mean to be late, but I don't like to waste time waiting in an airport for 4 hours. I'd like to just walk on the plane if possible. So I try to avoid getting there super early. I'm giving Jeff a panic attack.
We are not going to fly together.
No, I like to fly with the last minute. I'll just let you go earlier. I'll meet you there late.
Lounge
and I like
for
to be
2
the last
hours.
to board. Oh, yeah. I do like a good lounge. I know for international flights you have to get there early, so I'm forced to some extent. And I just don't like to be, some people are the first to board on a plane. I'm I don't want to sit on a plane longer than I have to, so I like to be the last to board, figure out the seats. Maybe there's an empty seat that's better because I'm the last, We'll get into that another day of other travel tips. But anyway, you want to make sure that you're one of the first to actually board for these so that you they don't, end up checking your bag last minute by the gate and all of that. So there's some caveats to this one, but you can save tons of money. And I'm curious what you saw when you were just on the website looking.
This is great. Like, I've already found, I was looking at the Buenos Aires to Mexico City one. And
that's a good one.
There's all kinds, the visualization of this is awesome.
Yeah,
like,
cool.
We're not affiliates, but I think we should be getting some sort of cut right now because I am really talking.
Yes,
it's
you're welcome,
great.
Skip Lagged.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's so cool to see.
It is really, it's a really good UX. It shows you clearly which airlines, what your layovers are, where the stops are, where you skip. You've got all the filters on it. That's badass. I'm going to use this all the time.
It's amazing. And it's been around. Their UX is even so much better than it used to be. It's been around for so many years. And it's like, I kind of like knew it way back when, like back when I lived in New York a decade ago. And now I kind of forget about it often. So again, these are reminders to ourselves as well to check. Like, there's just so many tools, and sometimes it's just not worth like spending 24 hours doing all of this research. But again, if you just kind of keep a couple of these things in mind, try them out, it can be really helpful.
So number 7 is using direct flight maps. So what I mean by that is looking into when you've figured out which of the airports you want to take. Say, for example, I was talking about Heathrow and then that nearby airport. One of those airports might have direct flights to where you're going, and the other one might not have direct flights to where you're going. So you could be looking at the difference of a 3-hour flight or 8 hours with like a 5-hour layover or something like that. And I don't think anybody's a huge fan of layovers. I hate them, and I can. A lot of times I'll make decisions based on where the direct flights are from where I'm going to, or if I'm going to go there, just so I don't have to go through the whole layover process. So it's really, really easy if you use flightsfrom.com. You put in any airport that you want, and it'll give you this map overlay, and it'll show you on the map everywhere that they fly to nonstop. All the nonstop flights. So it can help with your decision-making process. It can help you figure out which airport to take. And a lot of times these nonstop flights will be a little cheaper than doing some zigzags back and forth, and it might simplify your life. For me, it's more of a maybe not so much saving money and more of like simplify my life. Which airport's going to give me the nonstop flight, just so that I don't have to go through the hassle of going through 3 stops, a bunch of layovers, all that kind of stuff. So that's flightsfrom.com. Really, really helpful, and it's just like an easy map overlay. I've chosen countries based on this. It'll be like, okay, I'm in Cluj. Cluj is pretty small, but it's an international airport. So I was saying, okay, where are the direct flights? Boom, boom, boom. Easy. There we go. Okay, so this is where I'm going next because it's a nice, easy direct flight. Flights were cheap. Done deal.
That's awesome. I've actually literally never heard of that website, never used that website, so I'm learning something today.
I don't think you even necessarily need that. It's a good one. You don't necessarily need that, but if you just look up direct flight map, there's a few websites that do that, and you just
cool.
You go in there, plug in the airport that you're looking at, and boom, map overlay shows you everywhere that particular airport flies directly to.
It is so useful, and like you said, maybe not as much for sometimes price, but just for like we hate. I mean, this is a caveat. Like we hate layovers. Like I will do anything to have a direct flight if I can help it. It just. Yeah, especially when you're flying international, because it's probably going to go through some international, like a different country. And I feel like it's like my phone probably won't work there. During COVID times, I was like, do I need a COVID test? Do I need, like, it's just more headaches on top of, I don't know, whatever else you're doing. So more chances for your bags to get lost or for you to miss a connection. Like, that's never fun.
I love seeing those when you're in Google Flights. It's like 51-minute layover. You're like, oh no.
Would you book a 51-minute layover?
I think I have. But when you see those
internationally?
ones, yeah, I have. Usually it's like coming back from Colombia to the States. For whatever reason, there's always a really tight layover in Panama.
Yeah.
It's like, it looks great because you're signing up for a total of like 9 hours of flying versus maybe like a 5-hour layover. But I know in my mind, I'm running because they cut it really, really, really tight.
I have run in that Panama airport.
Yep.
But I have a rule for myself. I typically will not do less than a 2-hour layover if it's international. That is a rule I have for myself. I was with a friend the other day who was flying he flew from Israel to Mexico. and had a layover in Germany. That was, I think, that same like 50 minutes, and Mrs. Flight had to stay another night, and I was like, no, like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, it's just, that's a rule. And when it does work out, it's lovely, but yeah, more often than not, you're just setting yourself up for a missed flight, and then you're just like usually waiting another day, so I don't like that. Okay, so number 8 on the list, this is one of my favorites, is using Google Explorer or Kayak. There's a bunch of websites now that have some similar features, but basically, so before when we said like, you know, number 1, start with Google Flights and then kind of like search for the place you want to go and you're setting your like your destination and booking things. This is more of like back to, I think it was number 4 where I said be flexible with your destination as kind of a rule. This is where I would actually go to check what destinations might be other alternatives. So if you go to Google, you can just put in where you are or where you know you will be and flying from. And it basically shows you, it's another one of those just like pretty UX designs where it shows you a map of the world and like all the little flight, like little arcs, you know, and it has prices. So you say like, you can either put in a specific date that you know you want to fly or time frame, or say like, I think I might want to go somewhere in January or October or whatever. So again, very digital nomad friendly. And then it shows you during that time frame what prices are right now. So on a map, it'll be like, let's just say, so let's just pretend I'm in Atlanta and I want to fly anywhere, right? I can look at a map and be like, oh, there's like Europe, it looks like everywhere is $1,200 flights, $1,300, $900, but then like $300 to France. Like, all right, I hadn't thought about going to France, but like that looks cool. Or you can say like, oh, I want to go to Asia, and it will show you a map of like all the different countries if you zoom in, all the different cities, and the price of the flight like for that timeline. So it's not only direct flights like you were saying, it actually researches and finds all of the layovers, all the things, but it shows you like different flight prices in a really beautiful visual way. So you can like look all over the world and be like, like hadn't thought about going there, but that looks like a cool flight price. Like I'm going to do it.
Maybe I'll spend 3 or 4 days there.
Exactly. So it's kind of one of my favorites. It's somehow, you know, we did an episode, I feel like it was several weeks ago or maybe a month or so ago, how we choose destinations that we go to. And one of them, we mentioned vaguely like flight prices. And so this is more tangibly like how sometimes we're choosing destinations is like just looking at a map like that. And I feel like this just amplifies the beauty of the freedom that you have as a digital nomad, because if I think back to my corporate days, like there's no way I would have just been like, where in the world do I want to go? I was like, I got a specific place because I only have 10 days and you know my whole year, and I've been dying to get to this destination. But now I'm like, well, here's a cheap flight to this place. Like hadn't thought about going to Honduras this week, but like, all right, you know, and maybe I'll get to that other place I want to go later this year or next year. Like doesn't matter because you have all the time and freedom in the world. And again, I've mentioned this before, like sometimes those end up being the coolest, best experiences, mostly because you have zero expectations. You just kind of ended up there. So it's like, it can only exceed because you haven't thought of anything. So I don't know. I love to live this way. If you're listening to this and we sound insane because you've never traveled this way, like welcome, buckle up. It's the beauty of digital nomad life. And I know it might sound like you guys have lost your mind, people don't really travel this way, but once you get a remote job and you can be living this way, you really can do all of these too. So yeah, you've never looked at it that way, Jeff?
No. I've never used, I think I've used the same mindset, but I've never used a tool like that. That's super cool. It's kind of, it makes me think of Airbnb when they've got like a feature on there too, or it's just like pick anywhere and they just show you cool places. You're like, oh, well, I could go there. Why not?
Never thought about that treehouse in a mountain, but all right.
Yeah, exactly. I thought about living in a treehouse for a week. That sounds pretty good. Number 9 is Hopper. So this is going to bring us back to like more in the lines of flight alerts type of apps, and it is an app for your phone. And basically what you do is you plug in where you're coming from, where you're going, and it'll show you on this really nice visualization of a calendar, and it's color coded. So it'll show you red to green on like how overly expensive certain times are and how cheap other times are. So for example, you could be looking at like, I'm thinking about going to Peru at some point in December, and you might see the first week is all red. Like that's really, really expensive that time to go. But the second week is all green for whatever reason. I don't know the airline gods decide that certain times are really cheap and certain times are really expensive. But you don't know because you're not looking at these every day like these apps are crunching all this data saying, okay, historically, this is a really cheap time. And when you plug it in, it'll tell you should book now because it's going to go up by, it'll tell you the average price amount, it's going to go up by $150 in the next week or something. Or you should wait 2 weeks because right now, for whatever reason, who knows, jet fuel might be really expensive. Who knows why, but it'll incorporate that in and it'll say book in 2 weeks because it's going to get a lot cheaper. And same, kind of like Google Alerts, it'll just send you push notifications to your phone. Yeah, it'll be like, you need to book now. Like all of a sudden prices just drop. It's probably not going to hang. I've done it before. I was flying where was I flying? Flying to Germany, and I think the ticket was around $900, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it dropped to $530 for an hour. I was like, boom, just bought it, and then sure enough, it went straight back up to $900. So it's like,
wow.
Yeah.
It's so satisfying when you win that game.
so satisfying.
Because I'm not always winning that game.
Yeah, exactly. It's really, really, really satisfying, especially if this is one of those ones like where you're talking about being a little bit more flexible, being flexible with where you're going and maybe what you're going to talk about next, because it might not land exactly on the day that you have in mind. So really, really helpful. HOPPER.com. And also,
I've literally never used it.
Yeah, it was probably the first one that I used. It's just whatever reason popped up on my radar.
And hopefully this helps you guys listen. Like, you do not have to go through all 11 or my 12 bonus every time you book a flight. Like, Jeff and I are telling each other ones that, like, I didn't even know about. So don't feel overwhelmed. Kind of like maybe listen to this again when you're going to book a flight next and try a couple things, but you can drive yourself crazy. Part of this for me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of research and then just book something, like, because I don't want to spend 18 hours a day researching this. And with that also, when you were talking about seasonal stuff too, or just surprise, like you don't know why something's more expensive. Sometimes, for example, like Costa Rica, which I know really well, like around the holidays, Christmas time, New Year's, stuff like that, it's way more expensive, not just for like hotels and houses, but flights actually are more expensive because everybody's going that time. But then also in March, it's a big spring break destination for a lot of like kids and families with kids in school. But if you're from another country and you're not thinking about this, or you're a nomad without kids, you'd be like, why is this flight so expensive right now? But if you just waited until after the spring break season, it might go down again. Or for example, I remember flying into Romania or doing stuff, like there was a huge music festival that was around the time we were going, and it's like flights were more expensive. So sometimes you don't know why, but using these types of tools, it's just like, you might think it's just expensive to go there, but it might just be that time. And so using these can tell you better times to book. So was there something else you're going to add?
Oh, yeah, no. To that point, looking at flights one way to Colombia from SFO to Medellin, looking at if you go before January 1st, the flights are around $600. After that, we're looking at flights that are like $197. So, play around with the calendars a little bit, because it's like sometimes it's less about where you're flying to and what the distance is, and more about when you're flying and how popular that destination is at the time.
We didn't really look, we kind of said be flexible a little. I guess I'll talk about that now. I'll kind of lead into this next one with it, which is be flexible with, I said kind of your day of the week, but also your week of the month, your month, is just be flexible with your timing in general. And one of my favorites when I start, so again, as we talked about Google, using Google Flights, one of my favorite, most satisfying things to do when booking flights is like, because we are so flexible with our timing, I put in a destination and you can kind of click like the calendar and it will show you every day, like in the little squares of each calendar day, what that price is. So it might be like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is like $795, $745, $700, and then like this one random Tuesday, it's like $340. And I was like, I don't know why, but like I can fly on that Tuesday, why not, So there's nothing more satisfying to me than when I can like be really flexible with my dates and times and days of the week and things like that. And I like to use Google Flights for this kind of first look of it. But you can there's so many tools we just talked about, but check out different days that you're flying. So again, most people, when I think about my corporate days when I was, living in New York and working for, a big corporation where I had to be in an office Monday through Friday. Typically, I was always flying on a Saturday or a Sunday, but trying to fly on a Saturday to maximize my time. And flights are usually more expensive on those days. But because when you have the flexibility to not be in an office and travel any day, night, morning, week that you want, you can be way more flexible. So not only just saying like, oh, I might go 2 weeks later because it's cheaper, but also like on a Wednesday instead of a Saturday or whatever. So be really flexible. And again, I love looking at that Google Flights calendar little drop down and just see it just shows you like in such a beautiful, I love Google's UX. Thank you, Google. To see like what the best day or time to go. And like, for example, when I just booked my flights, I was in Mexico the last couple of weeks. I was totally flexible about when I went. I knew I had a friend's wedding it was actually on a Sunday, but I wanted to go a couple days in advance, but it didn't matter to me when. So I think I went on a Wednesday, and I actually ended up flying back on a Wednesday too, because the price, it just made sense. And I was like, okay, why not? I'll do my work day and then hop on a flight afterwards. It doesn't matter.
The tip is almost like fly on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. It's always
that's true.
Always cheaper. And also, I did a little research on this for those of you who are not a big fan of waiting in the TSA security lines. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the least common time to travel, and you'll have generally the lowest wait when going through security. So if that's a consideration.
Because you have all of the, most business people are flying Monday and then either Thursday or Friday, and then all the other normal corporate office people are flying Saturdays and Sundays or holidays or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's usually that Tuesday, Wednesday time where it's just the lines aren't as bad, the flights are cheaper just because not as many people are flying on those days. And when you get that remote job and you can live as a digital nomad, then you can fly on Tuesdays and Wednesdays too.
Yep, exactly. Nothing like walking through an airport ghost town. It's all yours. Yeah, not bumping into people. Oh, it's such a good feeling. It's amazing.
You will. Apparently you won't do that, but
I will not. I will not. You'll be on your own.
I'm happy to. I stress myself out sometimes those last minutes, but I do it every time. It makes no sense. With that, so I know we had originally planned for 11. I've got a quick bonus number 12 at the end. But Jeff, what was number 11?
Yeah, so number 11 is sometimes it makes more sense rather than to take connecting flights with layovers to just book in legs. So just book one-way tickets to specific places. And then book another one-way ticket. So that could mean that you book a one-way ticket and you're like, okay, I might want to actually stay a couple days here. It makes sense. Like, it's just a cheap one-way flight. You looked at your map that shows where all the direct flights are to, and that particular place, like somewhere you never hung out before. So you might spend 2-3 days there because you've got that flexibility as a digital nomad, which is awesome. And then you go onward with your next one-way flight. Because for whatever reason, sometimes it's cheaper to do it that way. I don't know why. Again, I don't know the reason. We're not the experts. We already threw that caveat in there. We don't know the whys of these things. We just know that it happens. So sometimes if you know what your destination is, just take a look at where the stops are if it is like a multi-segment type of flight, and consider the different routes, maybe staying in one of those locations and then booking a one-way flight. Or the alternative is I've also done same day one-way tickets, right? So I'll fly nonstop to one place and then I'll buy another one-way ticket that continues to my destination that's just connecting like 2 hours later. And for whatever reason, buying it like that as individual separate flights is cheaper than buying it as one package where you just where you buy it all the way through. Have you done that before?
I've done that a lot. So one caveat and then one tip for the travel stuff. The caveat when you do that, if you book them separately, make sure you have an even longer layover, probably, especially if it's in a foreign country than you otherwise would. Because when you book it all through, one airline or one ticket, you can keep going through the airport and they're aware that like you are there and doing that. But when you book them separately, you usually have to get your bags, go through customs, leave, come back in. So if you're like, oh, an hour, layover, great. You absolutely will not make it. Like you won't even be probably through customs and back in. So it can be a pain if you're doing it like in those layovers. And I did that, for example, that flight I talked about from Mauritius to Namibia. We booked a one-way flight to South Africa, to Johannesburg, because that was the cheapest, and then had to like leave, go in, come back, go through customs, check back in, and then fly that same day from Johannesburg to Windhoek in Namibia. So it can be a little bit of a pain, but sometimes it's just so worth it for the savings. So that's if you decide to do it all in one day, make sure you're aware of that. And then enjoying that layover, I've done that several times, going to different countries. I think the first time I did that, I was flying from Israel to Greece, and there was a layover through Cyprus. So there was a morning flight and a night, like I got in the morning, left at night, and like spent the whole day in Cyprus, which I had never been to at the time. I've done that. I forget where I was flying through the Middle East somewhere to a country I can't remember what country it was. From Oman, I was flying through Dubai, and there was some layover. Where was it? I'll have to look up my maps while we're doing the next one. But you get to explore countries or do a layover that maybe it's like basically you're just getting to explore a country for free. Like if you want to stay a day or two. There's even some countries, like I think Qatar does this. I want to say maybe the UAE does this. I can't remember which ones. There's a couple of countries in the Middle East, because they are such like hubs for layovers and overnight flights, and they can basically get money for you to explore their country. They will sometimes pay for your hotel to stay that night if you extend and do that 24-hour layover, and you can explore their country. So yeah, it's really neat. Cool. And if you, again, these are just kind of things you have to know and Google and take advantage of, but it's a cool way to like see a country for free, essentially. If it's only a day, you might not see too much of it, but you get to, see if you want to go back there, basically. So that's what I have to add to that one.
Like a little trial version.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nice. And maybe it's just somewhere you wouldn't get back to. So with that, the last one I want to add is our bonus number 12. This is a weird one that I almost never remember to do, but it does help, is using a VPN when you book from a different country. So I forget where I was. I was somewhere in, I think I was in Europe somewhere booking a flight. I don't know, somewhere else. I can never remember. But wherever I was, I think I was like in Lithuania or something trying to book a flight. And it showed it was, it was maybe $400 flight, let's call it. And then I used a VPN from that country of like where the airlines were from, or sometimes you just put in the US or put in like Italy, put in a random country. It will actually be a different flight price. Like it simply by it thinking, this is where, airlines are like, they're tricky, they get real. So it might just be a country that maybe people don't have as much income, right? And it's like, they will literally just give cheaper flights like from that country if they think that you're there potentially. I'm sure there's other reasons I don't know about. Sometimes it's just like if you're in the airlines, if it thinks you're in the country of like that hub of that airline or carrier, whatever it is. I'm sure there's a billion different reasons I don't know, but play around with the VPN. So whether you're at home booking it or you're in a different country, try around, like just try a few different countries. So you set your VPN as if you're in a different country than you're in, search for that exact same flight, and sometimes it will literally be a different flight price just when like it thinks your IP address is in a different place. It's wild. You can save hundreds of dollars doing this sometimes.
Would you do this on the actual airline's page, or would you do this like on Google Flights or Kayak?
Either way.
Either way.
Yeah. So wherever you are, that's a good question, actually. Yeah, it seems like it would make a difference if it was like on the airline's website or Google. So I don't know, but play around with it. So like right now, if you're in Mexico and you're going to book a flight, you're looking for flights, like you said, from Argentina to Mexico later, try it in Mexico where you are, try your VPN in the US, try your VPN in Argentina, and then try your VPN in like India and somewhere else, and like see if flight prices change. It's not always the case. It doesn't work 100% of the time. I've tried it, but I have actually found like $100 cheaper booking it this way.
Well, it only takes a couple seconds. It's worth it. Just flipping a switch, yeah.
Yeah, and it's wild because, again, it's just like that takes a couple seconds, right? But then when you pair it with like the 12 other things you've already tried and spent 3 hours doing, sometimes you're just like, I don't have one more bit of like energy in me to try one other hack. Like I've already used 4 of them and I'm tired and I've been researching for 4 hours. But again, if it's, I don't know, it can make a difference. So if you have the energy and the bandwidth to try a couple of these things compounded on one another, this is how we do it, guys. And we're not always perfect. We are not the flight hackers. We are not the points people. I feel like people can spend days like hacking this system, and it's like a full-time job, really and truly, if you really want to get into all of it. So I don't like to do that. I know you don't like to do that, but we do like to be smart. And so you can try a couple of these tips and just kind of see what works for you.
I've had a few of my friends explain the inner workings of all the miles and points and stuff. It just goes right over my head. Like I just get, I just get my eyes glaze over and I just retain none of it. It's just so much. I don't want to. Like, and I think most people don't want to. The people that find the game in it, the joy in it, sure. Like there's some people that just love deals and they love figuring out how to. I just want to get a flight that's not too expensive. Yeah, exactly. So this is for you guys who are in that camp. And if there are people that want the flights experts, let us know. And we've got a few. We'll bring them on.
Yeah, we have some friends who we travel with who love the game and work for credit card companies and writing about this kind of stuff. So, yeah, they exist.
We can have them distill it down into human language and try to make it so it's digestible. If that's of interest, write us in hello@beachcommute.com. Let us know if that's...
We have friends that have, like... I feel like have opened like 11 different credit cards with every airline to get the sign up points and all. I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't, but people do love it. So we can talk about it. And I will say, we didn't talk about this one, but I do, it is smart to have an account with all the airlines and the partner airlines and keep track of miles in general. So I will book flights with miles every now and then. I do use them, but I'm not like, again, there's ways where it's like, if you book it with this miles for like this partner airline and transfer your points and do it on a Tuesday at 10 p.m. And I'm like, no, I won't. So do sign up for like, get your miles. I do book flights with miles when it makes sense, but it's just, it's a lot. So yeah. Any other last thoughts for this one, Jeff?
No, I think that's everything that I've used plus some. So with these tips, like I said, don't go through all of them maybe, but with these tips, I think you'll probably find a better deal. And maybe last thought, you don't need to book 4 months in advance. I'm reflecting back on past me before I was traveling, thinking, oh my God, my trip's coming up in 3 months. I better get these tickets in. It's like, sometimes it really it doesn't make it, like if you go through all the things that we talked about, these are better tricks than booking early. Booking early a lot of times does not equate to cheaper. I mean, we talked about this earlier, like the cutoff point is somewhere around 1 to 2 weeks beforehand. I think probably about 2 weeks beforehand prices start going up, but it's not like the old days of when you're going on that one time a year vacation where you're like, oh my God, I got to book these 6 months in advance. That's just kind of not a thing. It's a little bit of a misnomer. I don't know if it changed. Maybe it was that way back in the past.
Right.
I wouldn't know, but it's definitely not the case now. So you don't have to have it in your head where like I have to have these things booked well in advance because it's just
and I will say oftentimes like you can find slightly better deals if you were to book a month or two in advance. But I think as you and I look at our lifestyle and maybe your lifestyle as a digital nomad, once you start, it's like I'm willing to sacrifice paying a little bit higher flight prices for the freedom of not locking myself into places. So I think that my message would be, yes, you might find it might be $150 cheaper to book this flight 2 months in advance than what you're going to find 3 weeks in advance. But like maybe you're not going to want to go on that flight, so you're just wasting all that money. So it's kind of a trade-off there, but you can still find decent flight prices 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And sometimes when you book way in advance, it's not even the cheapest. Like I'm going to Costa Rica in January with some friends and they booked their flights. They all booked them, I don't know, maybe like a month ago because they're all, it's like friends from back home and they're like actually planning in advance and doing things. And then several days ago, my friend she actually like likes to look at things. She had an alert set and saw that it dropped and they actually were all able to change their flights and get cheaper ones closer to, so you just never know what you'll get. Flights are all over. So we like to use these little hacks so that you know when you are getting a good deal or you can be flexible to find the good deals, basically.
Well, with that, we will see you again next week. Thanks for joining us. And if you have any show suggestions, hello@beachcommute.com. Chat to us about travel. We love talking about it.
Yep, and beachcommute.com/email. If you haven't already signed up for our email list, we send out info about our new podcast every week and 2 remote jobs. Lots of good info. Jeff and I share a lot of our more personal like travel pictures and stories that you don't get on the podcast. So it's always fun. We love our email subscribers. And with that, we'll see you next week.